Hey, good morning from another sunny Kansas City day. It is SportsBeat Live, our weekly chat session. I'll get that out, where we talk Kansas City Chiefs with the folks in the media who know them best and with you. Please send us questions, comments, and join in the conversation with us. We have with us columnist Vahe Gregorian, beat writer Herbie Teope, and beat writer Jesse Newell. Sam McDowell will be along with us a little bit later in the show. So, Chiefs played Sunday night against the Tampa Bay Bucks, and they don't play again until Monday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. So it changes the week a little bit. Of course, we came to you from Tampa Bay, at least these fellas did, after the game, and there has not been a practice since then. Typically, in a normal Sunday to Sunday week, there would have been a practice, and we'd be preparing to cover the kind of the second practice. So, Herbie, just take us through on a situation like this. How does the Chiefs' week change when they play on a Monday night?
Well, they get actually essentially 2 days off, from Sunday. And Blair, say it with me. It's back-to-back primetime games.
Prime time. Hate prime time.
But yeah, they get 2 days off, and then the schedule changes from what normally is a Tuesday. Now that's a Monday, a Wednesday. And so they'll begin practice on Thursday through Saturday because the schedule moves back a day. But, having that Monday night off after a Sunday night game, a primetime game in Tampa, it's actually a nice mini vacation for them of sorts. Because Andy Reid said even after the game, you watch some of the clips of the post-game locker room celebration. He was telling the players, you get 2 days off. And, of course, all the players were cheering. For us, it's the same old, same old. We're just waiting for media access, which begins today.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. It is different for the players and coaches, of course, probably for the players more than the coaches. They're grinding away all the time. But, and after the Chiefs win a game the way that they won, which was somewhat convincingly, but very impressively over a Tampa Bay Bucks team that had the NFL's top scoring defense. On this show, we try to find the things that we really liked about the Chiefs' victory or game, and the things that we didn't like. We spent a lot of time on Sunday night into Monday morning talking about all that we liked, and there was so much to like about that game and what Patrick Mahomes did and what the defense did, and special teams had rebounded. So I want to start today by asking you guys, Jesse, I guess we'll start with you. What nits do we have to pick from the Sunday night game? And listen, a coach will say this all the time. We've covered enough football, all of us, to know that after a coach wins impressively, after his team wins impressively, he's always warning us to, there's plenty to improve on. There's plenty to practice. Practice is going to be intense because, even though we just put 41 points on the NFL's top scoring defense. So just look at it. Now that we've had a few days to reflect on what Kansas City did in Tampa Bay, what are some things maybe that we can look at for the Chiefs to spend some extra time in practice with?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. For the offense, not as much as the defense, but offensively, we talked about outlier performances. The Colts game was an outlier performance on special teams. You're not going to just give a team 15 points or 14 points, whatever it was that the Chiefs special teams did in that week. So you expect them to come back and be better the next week. The Chiefs special teams was better, but this outlier performance in this particular game was third downs, and the Chiefs did amazing on third downs. You don't take that away from them, but you also don't expect to convert 70% of your third downs in any given week. So again, just a little bit better efficiency on those early down situations, some incompletions where there was still a little bit of miscommunication, a few times where, the receiver's not exactly in the right spots for Patrick Mahomes. He had to throw it away. That's kind of the minor stuff on offense. On defense, I will say there's probably a little bit of worry out there. Jalen Watson has had a great season so far. This was his worst game. The Bucs flat out picked on him, and they were using some of his bad technique against him on the sideline. They were isolating him. They were going after him. And Trent McDuffie's not quite back yet. He's going to be out at least those 4 weeks with the IR injury, the injury that put him on IR. So they need a better Watson this week, because now once that tape is out there, other teams are going to do this. honestly, Nick Bolton was not very good in coverage either, and Juan Thornhill was not very good in coverage. Both of those guys, from some of the rewatch of the film, were not performing the roles as they needed to do to get locked on some of those receivers that Tom Brady found down the field. So I think much more on the defensive end than the offensive end, but once some of these, cracks in the armor come about, other teams are going to try to replicate the same thing and use those weaknesses to their strength as well. So I think Jalen Watson and then some of the coverage from Juan Thornhill and Nick Bolton underneath, those are some of the things on film that are going to stick out. Those are some of the things that need to get corrected before the exact same coming up against the Raiders.
In Watson's case, I'll say this: Tom Brady is a veteran quarterback, and Blair and guys, we know when you think of veteran quarterbacks, they're going to go after rookies. So it's important for Jalen Watson, as Jesse Newell was saying here, to have that short memory, because rookie quarterbacks are going to get picked on from veteran quarterbacks, guys like Tom Brady. Got to have that short memory.
And look, this is a week after he had a 99-yard pick six, so had the play of his life, and turns around and has to face Tom Brady. But one thing that I thought is interesting, that he's getting the reps over Joshua Williams, a guy who was picked ahead of him in the draft. What is there? Listen, I'm not saying everybody could have taken that interception, the Justin Herbert pass, 99 yards, but there were reasons. That was a Chargers breakdown on that play as well, and Watson was the right place, the right time, and took it back. But what do you think the Chiefs see in Watson over Williams, Herbie?
I think it all started in training camp, because in camp, if you remember, Joshua Williams was a guy who was getting more reps with the ones outside of Jalen Watson. And then Steve Spagnuolo, the defensive coordinator, said, hey, we had to remind this guy, I'm paraphrasing here, that, you got to play faster. This is the NFL. And even Watson said it took him an acclimation period where he had to start playing faster. And then he's a talent. This is a guy drafted in the 7th round. And a lot of, I thought he should have gone higher. When you look at a lot of the draft projections, nobody thought he was going to be a 7th round pick. Even Watson was saying he thought he was going to go higher than the 7th round pick. But he is a player that the Chiefs really like. It took him a while, but he finally settled in training camp where he was able to overtake Joshua Williams, probably with a little more prompting from Steve Spagnuolo to play faster. And now you see where he is now.
And I kick this to Sam, but I think part of this, too, you have to realize when we're talking about Watson is L'Jarius Sneed has had such great production so far in the slot and on the inside and rushing out of that. So you're sort of putting your rookie out on an island there. And I think that's why the Chiefs drafted Trent McDuffie, is to basically say, hey, we believe in this guy. We're going to have him lock down that one side, potentially move pieces that way. So it's not an easy assignment for Jalen Watson, but again, some of the technique things that he broke down with, probably we haven't seen from him in previous weeks. And again, you could see from some of the production from the Tampa Bay guys that they were picking on him, and they were picking on him pretty good. So it's something that needs to be shored up, or you move to your next option of Joshua Williams and see if he can give you better production. But again, this is not a failure of the season from Jalen Watson. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying in this particular game, the Bucs picked on him, and they picked on him with good success.
What do you guys think of this stat? I wish I had written down where I saw it on Twitter, but just scrolling through my Twitter account, and this caught my eye. And I'll have to, if anybody remembers, if they saw it and remembers, please give this person credit. But I thought this was pretty interesting, that 7 times in Patrick Mahomes' career he's faced the number 1 ranked scoring defense, and he's 6-1 in those games. That's pretty impressive. I don't know if anybody else saw that, or we can credit who put that out there. It may have been NFL Network. I don't know, but that's a pretty heady stat for Mahomes. We listen. Same quarterback that that had some issues against that led an offense that had issues a week earlier against the Colts. But there's something about going up against a really good defense that seems to bring out the best in Mahomes.
Yeah, Blair. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I think it's as much an Andy Reid stat it is a Patrick Mahomes stat. I mean, I think Andy Reid sort of, holds some things back for games that he knows are going to be the more difficult ones. And I think the third down stat that Jesse referenced earlier, converting 11 of your initial 13 third downs, which is when the game was won, is indication that Andy Reid had a really good day. And we all know Andy Reid did not have a good day the previous week against Indianapolis, and I think he lacked creativity. And I think part of the reason he lacked creativity is he was holding some stuff back to use, particularly against Tampa. Jesse went over this play with Brett. I never can get the pronunciation of Brett's last name. Tavo. But, the Marquez Valdez-Scantling play was a good example of that. He hadn't used that play yet. And so I think, like I said at the top, it's an Andy Reid stat as much as it's a Patrick Mahomes stat. But I mean, of course, Patrick's the one that's got to execute the plays.
I think also just it's a little tethered to the dynamic we've seen in Patrick of, certain instances you just sort of know there's going to be a little something more, right? And when it's a particular challenge, now of course we're saying this, and the Chiefs very much still have the Bengals game in their craw, and even the last Super Bowl, right, is not too far a distant memory. But if you look at other numbers about Patrick, you see what he does after a loss. Typically, you see what he does when he's in a situation where he's particularly challenged, whether it's by a guy like Shaquille Barrett or having played, the last game against Tampa. All these things are kind of always percolating in him. So it's a combination, I think, of sort of the practical point Sam's making, but I think also a little something inside him.
I thought the Tampa Bay game was easily his most creative game of the season. He's had creative games and certainly creative moments, but not just Mahomes, but the offense in general. Didn't Andy Reid say on Monday that that swing pass was MVS was something that they had not run, or that was a new play for them?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yeah, and the one that you've talked about, the 11 for 13 on third downs, the fourth down play that turned out to be the incompletion to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I hadn't seen that, and it was a brilliantly called play. Pass was a little bit high, but MVS has to make that Clyde Edwards-Helaire has to make that catch. So I'd seen a couple things that I hadn't seen, which supports the idea that Andy Reid was either holding things or hadn't used the entire playbook and pulled it out for Tampa Bay.
Clyde does need to make that catch. I will say I don't have it right in front of me, of course. I thought it was a little bit of an awkward angle, kind of coming over the head in a short range, but he's got to make that play. And Blair, to your bigger point there, and again back to what Sam said, there was a creative element to this that was just on a different tier than the week before, and I think that's something that Andy needs to ask himself about a little bit, to be honest with you. I mean, I know you want to not show everything all the time, but it's not like the Colts game was a preseason game.
I want to mention this. Clyde had caught every other pass this season, so his pass catching skills out of the backfield were better than any other back in the NFL. Going back and rewatching that, I will put a little bit of this on Patrick Mahomes. Sometimes he just gets a tendency to not square himself up. He makes so many throws, so many off kilter. When there's an easy one, set your feet, throw the ball over the top. He could have lobbed that thing out there. I mean, that thing, there's no reason that ball just can't float into CH's hands. So I'll give a little bit of this to Patrick Mahomes as well. That was a kind of a tough catch with a tough angle with this. I do want to say this too with the offense in regards to it. Part of this might just be, we heard Andy Reid talk Monday very openly, I thought, about how him and Eric Bieniemy went through the playbook and kind of went through everything after the Colts game and said, is this working? Okay, no, going to throw it out. Is this working? Okay, maybe keep it, that sort of thing, but then try new things. Part of this could just not just be, hey, Tampa Bay, saving things for them. It could just be, hey, we don't know exactly what this team is good at yet. You know what I mean? Like, how are these pieces going to fit? We think we know in preseason how they're going to fit. We think we're going to run these plays that's going to benefit what this team is, but you don't know for sure. And so I think the Colts game allowed them to maybe pivot a little faster to say, hey, let's do some pin and pull runs. Let's do some runs under center. Let's get more physical with the offensive line instead of these zone plays that are out of RPOs, and do different things that maybe, we'll move away from the things you thought would work that weren't working and move towards things that now are working with this offense. So I think it can be kind of both hand in hand, but I do think maybe the loss of the Colts opened the eyes up a little bit more. Sometimes, winning can kind of keep you on the same path. Losing can kind of make you a little bit more easy to change. And I think we saw some change from the Chiefs this week, maybe not even just from a 1 week variety, but from a multiple week variety to say, hey, they can run some of these run plays and do them with success in multiple weeks and be more of a staple of the offense to come.
Okay, we're on SportsBeat Live talking Chiefs with Vahe Gregorian, Jesse Newell, and Sam McDowell. Hey, what the game that Isaiah Pacheco had, how does that change your feelings about the running back position, about him? He was terrific and ran hard and with a punishing style. Hey, listen, he ran the way a running back runs. It doesn't finish the season because he gets injured, but he was absolutely pounding the rock. And so does this change does that performance change the way you think about the way the Chiefs will use running backs this year?
I want Sam to start because on Isaiah Pacheco's Hall of Fame plaque will be that Sam McDowell did not believe in me. So go ahead, Sam.
I think, Blair, I think you guys probably chatted about this before I was able to hop on, but, when you are asking yourself, why can the Chiefs be better than they were in Tampa Bay? I think one of the answers is because they've got a lot of rookies that are only 4 games into their NFL careers. And, Pacheco is one of those guys, Jesse. To be honest, when you look at the entire rookie class, the Chiefs have not had a whole lot of production out of that, really large rookie class yet. Pacheco's the guy that I think has most noticeably been a lot better in week 4 than he was, the first day I saw him out of training camp. And the difference in Tampa Bay was there was actually some patience. I think, Pacheco likes to get it and run, which is a good thing on 3rd and shorts. But sometimes he doesn't always follow where the play is designed when he does that. And I thought there were a couple runs in particular where he waited on a block, even in traffic, and got just 4 extra yards out of it. But I also think it's overlooking that the Clyde Edwards-Helaire had by far his best game of the season as well. His rushing yards, I think, were about 24 over expected on the next gen stats. Not really typical for what we've seen out of him so far. He's just been very mediocre. And there was 1 third down and 1 play in particular with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'd all talked about the short yardage for the last 2 weeks where they just gave it to him up the gut. And it was like, oh, yeah, the old-fashioned way of getting a 3rd down and run. Just run it, left of center and see if you can't get this off your best 2 offensive linemen with Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey. They just really haven't had that guy who's been willing to put his face in there like that. So I thought it was a difference in attitude as much as it was a difference in execution. And, of course, those 2 things go hand in hand.
I thought Sam, real quick, I thought Sam, I was rewatching the tape from the end zone view, and there was one run play in particular early on in the first half for Pacheco where it's a wide zone run, so you have different gaps you can hit, okay? So you can kind of pick and choose. It was not there at first, and we always hear Pacheco talk about the number one thing that Eric Bieniemy talks to him about or the coach is talking about is patience with this run, patience. You can see he just kept running with it. I think earlier on, a couple weeks ago, he just hits upfield and runs into somebody and falls forward for 1 or 2 yards. He just got all the way to the outside and then hit a burst. The hole opened up there. And I thought it was a good indication for him. I mean, we've talked about this. He has the speed. He has the size. He has all those measurables, everything you could want. And again, the guy we talked about, like when Ronald Jones in the preseason to say, hey, he can get beyond his pads and make a 4-yard gain, an 8-yard gain because he's moving the pile forward. He has all that. He doesn't have the vision yet. That was a good sign for him to see runs like that where it could have been a 2-yard run with Isaiah Pacheco 4 weeks ago and it turned into an 8, 9, 10-yard run because he waited on it. He was patient and he found the hole at the end. I think that's a positive sign. Again, if you can teach him to do that, he has everything else to be a really good running back.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add, Jesse, is that Andy Reid actually put this pretty well the other day when he was speaking about the difference between Pacheco now and a few weeks ago, because it's obviously an acclimation thing. And the point I think Andy was trying to make was, he's going to go hard, but if you're not going hard with the right vision, patience, sense of the scheme, then it's sort of, counterproductive. By the way, I feel the need to introduce into evidence this Pacheco thing we're doing, because it was in the Colts press box where every time his name was announced, the PA guide seemed to have a little extra fun with it. And because of that, Sam and I are just driving Jesse crazy saying it that way every time. And Jesse has made it quite clear he really doesn't like it. So Sam, at least, is saying it more.
It's great. It's just taking me back to like 6th grade when you get bullied. It's awesome. The bullies just keep bullying. It's awesome. This is great stuff.
Just let me live, Jesse. I enjoyed doing it.
I think it's more you than me, Sam. You're not feeling good about yourself. That's why you're doing this.
Okay. So so Chiefs ended up with Pacheco and Clyde, Patrick Mahomes had a couple of runs too, and they ended up running for 189 yards against Tampa Bay, and that is following a trend in the NFL this year. A lot of rushing yards up by NFL teams. It's interesting. A lot of it has to do with quarterbacks, more mobile quarterbacks, but overall the trend is more rushing. And how does that play into the Chiefs' favor as they, believe it or not, lead the NFL right now in rushing defense? Now, look, they played a Tampa Bay team that went for 3 yards on 6 carries, so they obviously were not trying to run, but they also held Jonathan Taylor to less than 100 yards, I think 75, is that right, for the Colts, and kind of contained Kyler Murray as well on the ground. This defensive front is playing better than what we've seen here in recent years, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, I mentioned this on Twitter, I think, during the game, but one of the things that we haven't credited this defense enough with is their rush defense, because we chatted about that on this show like every week for all of 19 and all of 20. And their high point of the season is 103 yards in the opener to Arizona. Obviously, there was some Kyler Murray involved in those rushing stats as well. 12 times last year, they gave up 103 or more rushing yards. So they have been significantly better in the area where, like I said, 2 and 3 years ago, we thought was their most need for improvement. Part of that, I think, is because, although I mentioned earlier about the rookies, Karlaftis has not been particularly productive in the pass rush so far. I still think he's shown some things that will get there. But he is pretty good at setting the edge over there. And as much as people don't like Frank Clark, that's always been his strength as well, more than rushing the passer. So I think their defensive ends are helping as much as, obviously the defensive tackles usually get a lot of credit for that. And the other thing is, I hate to say it, but Anthony Hitchens and Ben Neiman aren't on the field anymore. And those two guys were not particularly productive in the run defense.
You hit on what I was going to say, Sam, is sometimes it can be a weak link system, and they got rid of some of the weak links, to be completely honest with you. I don't think you can overstate, too. There's a lot of question in the offseason, right, where they're going to re-sign Tyrann Mathieu. Instead, they brought in Justin Reed, and one of the big reasons I know they wanted to bring in Justin Reed is because they could remain in their nickel package but have some good run support, and he's been a really good run stopper as well. So you had him. Colin Saunders had a standout performance against the Colts, so you have to mention him. Chris Jones has just been a beast. He probably has performed so far better than Aaron Donald, which is something we should mention too, because if you're performing at or around the level of Aaron Donald so far this season, that definitely should be brought up. And then, I just mentioned Nick Bolton, the Bucs picking on him in pass defense, but Nick Bolton is better than his predecessor when it comes to run defense, and he has snuffed some of that stuff out, especially against the Bucs. He got in there, had a tackle for loss, and he's had a great start to the season so far too. So I think you've replaced some older veteran players with some younger ones who are frankly just better, and that this is the result so far, and it has been impressive to watch the Chiefs play run defense.
And that's true even as we're halfway through the Willie Gay suspension. Okay, let's get to some questions here. Rob asks, what's the best way to preserve Travis Kelce for the playoffs? Let's ask Vahe. Vahe, when you were playing college football, how did you kind of pace yourself through the long season?
Yes.
Well, I would only
Thank you.
I would only go down the field for timeouts, so that helped me when others were coming off the field. But listen, more seriously, that's a great question, but it's sort of the question of football in general, right? You gotta be doing everything you can to make this team as good as it can be. I think you want to be smart if you're up in a game, but that's not how the NFL works, right? I mean, you're doing everything you can to win the game. the Chiefs probably aren't going to have the luxury of saying we got to pace Travis Kelce, right? I mean, I think on a trajectory to be known as, if not statistically, at least in the eye test, the best or one of the couple three best tight ends who ever played the game. And that's part of that is because of his abandon and because of their ability to go to him at any time. So you guys might have a smarter answer to that, but my thought is you're stuck with having to play him a lot, which is quite fine. Maybe the Chiefs will have some windows where they can take him out of a game early and play some of the other 11 tight ends they have. But I think that I don't see a change coming to enable that.
Brian asks, should the Chiefs have run that last play before halftime at Tampa Bay? Mahomes could have been hurt on that. That's just the opposite of the situation in a week earlier in Indianapolis.
Somehow I felt like that was a makeup call. One way or another. I mean, I know it's a more convoluted situation than that, but what were you going to say, Jesse?
Oh, I just think this goes back to your previous point on Travis, which is it's football. I mean, he could have gotten hurt, but he could get hurt doing anything, really. So I actually like that call. I think Patrick Mahomes sort of reinforced the notion he talked about the previous week, which was he said his main discussion with Eric Bieniemy was no matter what happens, I will not make a mistake. I will not turn it over. And so he saw the pressure coming in this play. He knew that things were going bad, and he fell down. I mean, that's basically it. He took the sack upon himself and said, okay, let's get to halftime. I'm not going to make the catastrophic mistake at the end of this half like it could be if I get weird pass rush or whatever. So I think that was the right call. I think that's exactly what you're talking about when you're putting your faith in Patrick Mahomes' hands, and I think he made the wise decision. He was not going to risk the ball downfield or put the ball at risk when the blitz came for him, the rush came for him, and he fell down. He fell down. The Chiefs went to half. Everything was fine.
John asks what's going on with Ronald Jones. Maybe trade later. Listen, if this is what they're going to get from Isaiah Pacheco, that's what I thought had been missing, the hard running of Ronald Jones. And I don't know if one game's enough to change my mind, but it certainly is trending in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, Ronald Jones was sick a little bit last week. He missed a couple practices. We kind of thought he might be activated to the roster because of what we talked about, needing that physical run game. So as good as Pacheco is, every time he does have that, then, you potentially push Ronald Jones further down the depth chart and leave him on the practice squad. The other side of the coin is that, what if Pacheco gets hurt? So Jerick McKinnon doesn't really give you that. Obviously, CH doesn't give you that all the time. He's more of a smaller back, doesn't really push the pile as much as a guy like Ronald Jones or Isaiah Pacheco would. So stashing him might not be the worst thing in the world for the Chiefs if they're needing that off the bench. But like I said, he was sick a couple of days last week. And so I would expect him to stick with the practice squad. I'm not sure how much trade value he'd have at this point, but having that security is probably worth more to the Chiefs than some crazy late round draft pick.
Well, teams can pluck guys off the practice squad. So, you wouldn't need to give up, something for them there. You can sign them off somebody else's practice squad.
Good point.
All right, some questions about when players are going to get back. Trent McDuffie and Lucas Niang. I don't know about him at all. And Blake Bell. What's the IR rule about if you place a player on IR once the season starts?
So if they're on IR, they open after those 3 weeks, they open a 21-day window to at least begin practicing. And you're allowed to practice for 21 days before the team's got to make a move. So once you're sure that a guy was within those 3 weeks of coming back is when you'll start seeing him on the practice field. Now, you noted this earlier, Blair, when you asked Herbie about this week's schedule, but the Chiefs didn't practice yesterday. Usually we're here and the Chiefs have already gotten in a day of practice because of Monday. We don't know yet who's on the practice field. So that'll apply to McDuffie and Bell. And then Lucas Niang's a different situation because he's on the PUP. So I believe that the Chiefs have to make a decision on, I think it's in the next 2 weeks, about whether or not he's going to be out for the year or whether they do plan to activate him off the PUP because you can't stay on the PUP all year. The reason he's on the PUP is he never appeared in training camp for practice. He's not practiced at all since injuring his knee in a pretty significant way last year in the regular season game in Cincinnati.
All right, guys, I wish we had more time. We didn't spend any time on the next opponent, the Vegas Raiders, and they got their first win last week against the Broncos. I don't know why the Raiders were slow coming out of the gate. They've got some talent over there. Josh McDaniels, of course, is the coach, but maybe we're not going to do another show before Monday night, but we will come to you Monday night around midnight as we did last Sunday. I know we're all looking forward to it. So until then, for Monty Davis and George Howard, our producers, thanks to Vahe, Jesse, Sam, and Herbie, and we will talk to you again after the game on Monday night.